Conversation.
Gavin Price! More like Gavin Price! Dying really made me lose my edge.
Hello and welcome to The Kongversation. I'm Hyle Russell.
And I'm Jeff Onan.
And our special guest today worked at Lair for over a decade. First on the QA team of games such as Donkey Kong 64, Banjo-Tooie, and Conker's Bad Fur Day, before graduating to design, where he helped craft titles like Grab by the Ghoulies, Viva Pinata, and Banjo-Kazooie Nuts and Bolts. And we could just sit here and talk to him for the entire show about Grab by the Ghoulies, but we'd probably have a revolt on our hands from both our audience and our guest. So the only further introduction I'll give is that he's the co-founder, managing director, and creative lead of Playtonic Games. The studio's new game, Yooka-Laylee and the Impossible Lair, releases on October 8th. Please welcome to the show, Gavin Price.
Thanks for having me. By the way, you missed off credits for the double BAFTA award-winning Kinect Sports series.
Oh, I apologize. Yes, I didn't mean to undersell your accomplishments there, Mr. Price. I hope you'll forgive me.
No, it's the worst start possible.
I've honestly been trying to get you on this show for the better part of 4 years now, ever since we had Chris Sutherland on, like, before you'd even announced the title of your original game, before we even knew what Yooka-Laylee was, we had Chris Sutherland on the show. And then our friend Mitchell beat us to it. He had you on his show, the Super Jump podcast, like last month, and it completely undercut my 1,400 some odd days of courting you. So you should all check out that episode of the Super Jump podcast, by the way, if you just have to have more Gavin Price after this. And we'll try not to walk the same ground, or I guess talk the same ground as he did. But, you have carte blanche to say the exact same things you did there if you want. You can phone it in. I can't stop you.
No, I've been saving all my best Kinect Sports stories right here, right now. So, where do you want to start?
Kinect Sports is a good game. It's a good game for what it is. I understand our audience may not be like, yes, let's talk about Kinect Sports for an hour, but I would be okay with that if that's what you wanted to do.
Honestly, there's not enough games that have a man in a carrot suit. I think that's a pretty firm accomplishment right there.
Yeah, damn right. We went from sticking googly eyes on things like carrots to just let's just put people in carrots now. Let's just easy to mocap. A lot easier to mocap.
I think that innovation is what won you the BAFTA there. So I have to ask, how are you personally feeling right now? Because I've never had a game coming out in nearly a week's time. Is that a good type of adrenaline, or are your nerves just completely shot right now?
No, I'm completely shot. I'm not sleeping. Worried about anything and everything happening, and Nintendo just, hey, surprise, there's this brand new 2D Mario Donkey Kong crossover coming out on the 7th of October. We're surprise launching it right now. Oh, and it's only £1, not like expensive, and yeah, everyone will just be playing that instead. Like I've had that dream.
Yeah, so have I, but that's just typical of my usual nocturnal activities. No, I mean, that's good though that you're worried about it, because I was a little bit afraid that, we're here to ostensibly talk about Impossible Lair, but for all I know, you've already moved on mentally to your next project, and this is just kind of like a classic rock band being asked to play their greatest hits when they really want to promote their new songs. So it's good that you're still invested emotionally.
Yeah. It's like there's still like even though no one's really writing code or drawing a pretty picture for it or doing anything like that, business-wise, it's a massive, huge, 100% focus is still on it. There's still so much to do. Daly's still got tons of stuff going on all the time to jump on or proactively work out in terms of marketing it. All the other people in the studio are having a whale of a time. They're going, wow, look at what we're doing next on these many things. And they're all going, they're having fun. And like just a few people left behind are still in this stressful, where job's not done yet for us kind of mode. So, but it's nice to see in terms of as a general look over the whole studio. There's like, you know, pivoting your head and going from left to right, you can see all the past, present, and the future all going on at the same time, and it's exciting. But it's so nerve-wracking when you don't know what's going to happen regards a game that you've invested so much time and passion and energy into. Coming to that point, you'd think you'd get used to it, wouldn't you, over the years? But I think this is going to be my 21st or something game coming out. I never felt this way about a game before. Not even the first Yooka-Laylee. It's so strange. Just, yeah, I need help dealing with it.
Well, I'm happy that we're here to help contribute to your anxiety. So it's a proud moment in my life.
Thank you. It's great to have your support, actually, and in the game as well. I one of your bee. I rescued your bee the other day, and I was like, "Hey, there's Hive." Yeah, good old Hive Russell. So, yeah, you're helping us out in and out of our games. That's brilliant.
Yeah, I suppose I should say, in the interest of journalistic transparency, both Jeff and I are in the game as members of the Royal Battalion Guard. So this is probably the only time in your life where you can say you've been interviewed by two bees without, I don't know, worrying your loved ones or triggering some sort of crisis in their lives. Jeff, for the record, was a winner in the contest. He submitted the board game. I didn't do anything. Daly just said, "Oh, you're a bee in the game," and I was like, "Oh, okay."
Yeah, you know, on that topic, actually, I did have a question. I was wondering if anybody in the studio realized that the subtitle I put on that board game was Yooka-Laylee Having Dice, and it was supposed to be a pun on Gavin Price. I don't know if that was too obscure or not, or if anyone noticed that.
If that wasn't for the fact that was my high school nickname, which drove me to torment, I got it. But no one else did it. But it sent me to a very dark place. Thank you.
Oh, cool. Yeah, that's what I was hoping to do. So, excellent.
I feel like we're going to have to pay for this therapy.
And seriously, guys, those 2 brown envelopes you sent with us full of cash, they more than cover the costs. That's awesome. Thank you. Thank you. We ate very well that night. I had the Gavin lobster special, 2 lobsters. Awesome.
I have to know though, because I haven't been able to figure this out. Can you tell us what your battalion name is, Gavin?
Oh, actually, I can. Why can't I do it off the top of my head? Gavsting, that's it. Gavsting. It took me ages. Yeah, we got to a point in development like everyone had. I'm just going to grab the page with it all on now. Everyone had like kind of some placeholders, but I was like, oh no, these are rubbish. And I got my head down and had to come up with a ton of names for everybody. And I really do try my hardest to like give everyone a name that I think might wind them up a bit as well. Obviously, only employees here. Let's have a quick look at what do I search for here in OneNote. Hang on, I'm looking at the Match 3 MMO new design doc. Hang on, got to change OneNotes. B names. Here we are. Project Bounce. That was what it was called internally. Project Bounce for 2 years. There's a scoop. Yeah, we had tons. Who was it? Yeah. Joe the Bee's my favourite though. We've got a program here called Joseph Darthwaite, and I come up with loads of names for him, and he just kept rejecting them. And I was like, right, forget that. He's just called Joe the Bee now. His bee.
We were actually talking about that not 20 minutes before the show began, because we were going through the list of bee names that have been revealed, and we were wondering why that one was a bit shit, and that makes sense.
Yeah, it was. I come up with like 2 or 3, but I'd probably say there were 7 out of 10, to be honest. But Joe's got to earn 9 out of 10 over the next few years of his Playtonic career. But he kept on, just like not accepting anything. So I said, right, you're Joe the Bee. And it's his description is this off-brand Darrowbee was originally named Joseph, but got the name changed by deed pollination. So deed poll over here is like how you get your name changed or something. So he used deed pollination. And that's it. That's that story concluded. Back to Connect Sports.
Yes, absolutely. Jeff, you should be relieved that having dice is not the worst pun spoken on this podcast.
You know what? I was trying my best to come up with the worst pun, but come short once again.
Yeah, you'll never win a BAFTA with that attitude. So, Gavin, you've gone out of your way, particularly to stress that Impossible Lair was not developed to be a quote-unquote spiritual successor to the Donkey Kong Country games. But that being said, this is the Kongversation, speaking of terrible puns. And so a lot of people who tune into us or find us do so because of that connection to Donkey Kong. And, obviously Impossible Lair has a lot of Donkey Kong Country pedigree in its team. And comparisons have been made to not only the classic games that they made when they were with Rare, but also the more recent ones developed by Retro Studios. So I have to ask, did Retro taking the baton sort of Donkey Kong Country over the past decade and doing new things with it, putting a contemporary spin on it, did that in any way motivate or creatively inspire the team to then want to sort of take back the genre and see what else they could do with it to kind of like one-up them?
Well, taking back the genre and one-upping Retro isn't something a small Burton-on-Trent team of idiots try and do with that. No, honestly, it was down to there was a big wanting desire to kind of make something in 2D with these guys, and we just had lots of good ideas which kept evolving and snowballing into, wow, this is great for like the genre, that no one's doing this kind of stuff. It's stuff that happens in other genres, but no one's doing it to 2D platformers. And there's like tons of like 2D platforming. There's like tons of story-based 2D platforming, isn't there? Like Inside and Limbo, where you go on this kind of story-led journey. And then there's tons of Metroidvanias, but course-based A to B style, test of skill platformers. There's not really much beyond Super Mario and Donkey Kong Country, and we just like really wanted to do something in that area, particularly on multi-platform. It's not really there's not really much stuff out there outside of Switch. So no, we saw a good mixture of business opportunity and creative energy to like want to do that. If anything, and I wouldn't really say this ever again, if anything, I always in my mind it was kind of a lot of the ideas have stemmed from the time when I was playing Super Mario World back on the SNES ages ago. Do you remember like how it just had like, it took 2D platforming and then you saw this map world unveiling and pathing and weaving in and around this continent, and you thought, oh wow, this is great. And then I'm going to all these different areas and the levels within, they feel like a sense of place within all those areas. So I always just wanted to do that with 2D platforming and give it like a proper overworld to go off and explore, and influence what happens in a 2D level, and then in 2D levels influence stuff that back out on this overworld. And everything just kept coming from that, because we were like, well, what happens when you can just walk past the entrance to the next level and go to the next level? Why would you play a level? So we had to come up with an idea. Believe it or not, the Impossible Lair was actually not a core idea for the game. It was a solution to a problem we were having in terms of, well, why would the player go into any of these levels when they can walk past them on the overworld? Well, maybe you have to get something by beating these 2D levels that help a wider kind of quest goal. And we're like, okay, well, what would be a wider quest goal? And it was like, well, what if there's just this Impossible Lair? So every time you beat a level, you get an extra hit point to go on it. And we're like, oh, wow, that's great. That fixes that problem for us. And it's bizarre that seems to be the thing which has become like the marketing USP of the game, is the Impossible Lair. in fact, it's ended up in the title. We were like, wow, we nearly didn't have that. It was just our favourite solution to a problem we're having, marrying overworld gameplay and 2D level gameplay. Et voila, and hopefully it works out.
That's actually really interesting. So I think that one of the things that makes this game very different from other 2D platformers that are currently on the market is that top-down, three-dimensional overworld. And we on DK Vine have been kind of comparing that to the gameplay of games like Conker's Pocket Tales and Banjo-Kazooie Grunty's Revenge that the Rare handheld team had done years ago. I know a lot of the Playtonic staff worked on that Rare's handheld team. So how do you think it's been kind of revisiting that style of that top-down overworld, that gameplay, but now that you've got this larger scope of a game without the limitations of the handheld hardware?
Yeah, it has been. It has influences actually. There's actually an older, well, not as old, Rare game, which actually was part of a reference point for us during development called Saberwolf on the Game Boy. I think it was a Game Boy Advance game. Mm-hmm. And the lead designer of that game is on our design team here, Gary Richards. And I don't know if you've ever heard it or played it. It's one of my favourite 2D platformers ever. You play as Saberman and you collect a load of weird different creatures and objects to help you get over to Saberwolf's treasure at the somewhere on the level, and then you have to run backwards carrying the treasure with Saberwolf chasing after you, an AI controlled Saberwolf. It's really good. But that was a game as well which had an overworld with lots of exploration, questing, townsfolk, NPCs, etc. to talk to and meet, and it helped drive the 2D level gameplay as well. So there was some influence from our past in the game, inevitably. Not so much Donkey Kong Country, more if anything, this Saberwolf game. Now I love this Saberwolf game. You know, I've got great fond memories of it. And it's something like no one hardly ever remembers it. It was I think it came out post Microsoft acquisition.
Don't worry. We remember it quite well. It was part of that. It was published here in the U.S. I don't know about over there, but it was published by THQ, and it came out alongside It's Mr. Pants and Grunty's Revenge and Banjo Pilot as kind of this. They were very hard to find, but you were if you really wanted to, you could track down a copy even back then when it was new. But yeah, it was. Don't worry, you're speaking to the choir here. We know all about your sordid history.
Yeah, it was kind of funny. We actually did run into Gary Richards at E3 this year. We stalked him and tracked him down, and then we got to have a very brief conversation with him. And then when it was over, I was smacking myself in the head and was like, we never asked him any questions about the handheld games. We didn't bring up Conker's Pocket Tales or It's Mr. Pants or anything. And but anyway, yeah, it was really cool. We saw him and Harry Robinson. Both were when we were at E3 this year.
Yeah. Really, both really good guys. Gary, yeah, he's like proper old school, old Rare. He's got lots of unmentionable stories that I won't go into. But yeah, you know, that Saberwolf game, it's bizarre. It's amazing how cyclical ideas and stuff come around, things you thought at the time about something, and it could be 20 years ago, and you think, wow, you know, what that did back then never got expanded upon or something, and ideas just keep coming back to you, and you know there's something in them because you're like yourself loving them. You're thinking, no, I loved that game, and I'm gutted they never did a sequel. I was gutted. Yoshi's Island came out, and they reverted back to this level select screen, which was nothing like a playable, a wandering around overworld. It's still a great game, but at that time I remember, that's gutting, and I'm desperate to make a game like The Impossible Lair since 1991. But yeah, past works, past gaming experiences. It's bizarre. You can't help but be influenced them, but a little bit, I think.
Yeah, and there you go. Our audience really gets upset with us because we don't talk enough about Saberwolf for the Game Boy Advance. So by covering Impossible Lair, we're essentially just doing that. So there you go. It's two birds with one stone here.
Yeah. The map veiling in Impossible Lair, that's just like a nod to Saberwolf. Like when you open up a new area and you go through and the map unfolds and shows that area, it just reminded me of on Saberwolf when you unlock the map and portion of the map, a really nice hand-drawn style map, colours in. It's a great feeling when you're going on an adventure game. Yeah, everyone keep asking for more Saberwolf news from the DK Vine, and then my sealed copy of the game will only go up in value. So yeah, keep on.
Actually, you could just have Daily give that away on Twitter. I'm sure you could break 100,000 followers then.
You know what everyone kept saying, Gavin, you keep referencing Saberwolf. Should we just open that one over there on the shelf? And I was like, no, watch it online.
Well,
that's the pension.
Speaking of money, so unlike the original Yooka-Laylee, there was no Kickstarter campaign, no crowdfunding whatsoever for Impossible Lair. Were you always aiming for your second game to be entirely like self-sufficient without having to go to the public?
Not really. We just looked at pros and cons of crowdfunding, and pros that exist versus the cons that exist just didn't make sense for it. And we'd never say no to crowdfunding again in future, just arbitrarily, oh no, it's a no. We'd always think, oh right, is this a good fit? Is it not a good fit? Or is an early access model a good fit or not a good fit? So we're always open to trying different things. But, it was a pretty short conversation in terms of Impossible Lair. Hey, what's our route to market for this one? We thought, no, we'll just do more of a traditional, spend our own money making it, knowing that we've still got some things to do as well for the first Yooka-Laylee, and that plans for it aren't, it's not on our mind. We do have things and thoughts on our mind what to do. I won't go into any of that, otherwise I'll make Daily's life worse when she's in this, no, I'm just meant to be marketing Impossible Lair mode. I nearly tried to do a Daily impression then. I literally had to stop myself going northern.
Oh, please, just a little taste.
Hang on. I know, man. What are you doing? That's the best I could do.
No, that was spot
Sorry.
on. That was uncanny. I was actually a little taken aback. So I thought I was talking to Gavin. What's Daily doing here?
Thank you. I should have said one of her favourite phrases like "fight me" or something. Or that's all she ever types to me. Fight me.
Yes. I'm just nodding my head.
So yeah, kind of one interesting thing with this sequel is that I think some people in the community maybe expected the second game from Playtonic to potentially be starring a different set of characters. But it makes sense to bring back Yooka and Laylee since you're such a young studio. You're trying to build your brand. But since this is a genre shift, a new type of gameplay, did you ever consider using other characters besides Yooka and Laylee as the stars?
We did for a bit, yeah. So something happened during the first Yooka-Laylee where we kind of prototyped Yooka-Laylee doing 2D gameplay, like embedded within the Yooka-Laylee 1 worlds. Or all of a sudden you'd hit a point and the game would just turn 2D. And we had a lot of fun with that. So if we hadn't have already kind of fallen in love with Yooka-Laylee moving around in 2D using the first game's moveset, we may have explored that a bit more. And if the game's a resounding success and we want to do DLC, we do think actually then that'd be a great point to bring in new playable characters as stars of the DLC of Impossible Lair. So there's still scope to do that as well. But I don't want to overpromise anything and underdeliver. It may not happen, etc. But it's on our minds.
Interesting. I won't press you any further about what possible characters those could be. No, that's a lie. I'll do that later.
Okay.
Going back to Donkey Kong, that trilogy, the Donkey Kong Country trilogy for the Super Nintendo, it was known for having a lot of gameplay variety. I mean, besides just the hopping and bopping, you had, barrel cannons, you had mine carts and animal buddies and stuff like that. So does Yooka-Laylee and the Impossible Lair have any reoccurring gameplay segments similar to those? Like the original game had the Dr. Puzzle's transformations, which, were sort of a play on the Mumbo transformations of Banjo. There was Kartos, the mine cart. Is any of that back into play in Impossible Lair?
So I don't want to give too many spoilers away, but I don't want to again oversell it and underdeliver. So we're a lot closer to the 16-bit Donkey Kong games than the retro ones in gameplay style, I'd say, and like level composition and makeup. We do like to have themes on certain enemies and props, be the basis of the levels, and these, particularly some of the state changes, really do play homage to some of the older stuff. But we never tried to aim to do that. It's kind of in 2D gameplay. There's stuff you're always that'll appear, and people go, "Oh, that's this game's version of something else." And for us, thankfully, we can say we have these things called cannon flowers, and they're a bit like the barrels in Donkey Kong Country. But then it's the guy who made them in Donkey Kong Country has programmed them in our game. They're just a different skin now, so it's almost. We're not like trying to, hey, we're taking back what we developed in the first place. Now we've got our own IP. It's just more of, hey, this stuff's really fun. Why wouldn't we do that? And if we didn't do it, we'd probably get blasted for not doing it. What I've just been shown the real name for what I called cannon flowers. They're boom blooms by Daily. Daily's saying stick to the official language.
That's much better.
We really appreciate Daily for pointing out all the real official names of all the characters and objects.
Yeah. It's great fun coming up with names for everything like that. We get there eventually, because Daily says, Gavin, I know this is going to be like a lot of work and it's taking you away from really important business making decisions, but DK Vine will want to know. And I'm like, okay.
The thing is,
fine.
in 20 years, nobody's going to remember the business decisions. People are going to remember the boom blooms or whatever the hell you just said. They're going to remember that because that's going to be what's going to stick with people. So yeah, it absolutely does matter. It was always frustrating. It's always frustrating to me in games when they don't tell you what all of that stuff is called, as if it doesn't matter, as if there aren't obsessives out there like with a pencil and a notepad trying to learn everything they can about this completely fictitious, inconsequential universe.
Yeah,
I agree. And it helps build a richer world and universe, and it is nice to have all that stuff done, even if it meant I missed that call with Nintendo to go make a Diddy Kong sequel. Who wants that? Yeah.
Yeah, on the flip side, if you don't give something a name, DK Vine will have to come up with our own, and it might be something vulgar and not family friendly.
Will.
So
definitely
yeah.
will.
So
Yeah.
kind of
Protecting
shifting.
your brand.
Would you guys do that for free? I'm hearing no. Excellent. Daily contract. Right one up.
So shifting gears kind of towards the music composition for the Impossible Lair. So far, Playtonic, you've obviously had contributions from Grant Kirkhope, David Wise, Steve Burke, and David Wise and Grant are they're doing tracks.
Who are these guys?
But you've also got in-house composers now. You've shown off a couple tracks from Matt Griffin and Dan Murdoch. Is it kind of a goal to become more self-reliant on in-house compositions, or do you always plan to kind of involve David and Grant in the music process?
I think we would always want like David and Grant kind of involved. They're great guys to work with. They bring a lot of ideas. and but it's great as well to start like David was coming into the studio frequently and helping Matt and Dan compose the music and kind of help them get into being good at him, even though David could have put a business head on and said, hang on, I'm going to make less money doing this in the long run because you guys will use your in-house guys more. But David's such a nice guy, so it is nice to have it in-house and available. And if you need a new tune, or all of a sudden you have an opportunity where you go, great, we've actually got time to do something else. And if we'd have gone to Grant or David, they may have gone, oh, actually, we haven't got the time. We're busy. We've now got talented people in-house to lean on as well. It just makes all our options moving forwards even more bountiful. But we'll never turn our backs on Grant and Dave. Grant Kirk, man. Yeah, he's, she's my favourite, I have to say. Absolutely wonderful.
We're creating all sorts of scandalous headlines for the news sites with this episode. I love it. So, obviously, I've been wanting to have you on the show for several years now, the better part of half a decade. And so, I originally, when I envisioned having you on the show, we were going to be talking more about the original Yooka-Laylee, and now, that's old news, essentially. But it's been out for 2.5 years, if you really want to feel your age. And I was just wondering, now that you've had all this time to kind of sit with that, how do you feel about how it was received, the critical reception for the game? Almost 3 years later, where are you at with that?
Yeah, so it's no secret that it was Marmite. Really, I don't know if you know what the term Marmite means, but here in the UK, Marmite's a Vegemite product, and it's marketed as you either love it or you hate it. So everyone uses it as a descriptor for a lot of stuff, and it was bizarre. I think its Metacritic score, for example, was completely fair. If we look at it and go, yeah, that's fair. We know why it's that and why it could have been better, but it just gives us an appetite like it does any game, that worked on 20 years ago or 2.5 years ago, in terms of, I always just want to do it better again in future, and do it better again and better and better and better. And seeing the sentiment over the past 2.5 years has actually turned more positive long term. We've seen this trend. Daily monitors stuff and sends sentiment and insights and community insights around the team. And we've seen so many people go, at the time I was put off because some people didn't. And people have given it, and they've kind of accepted it more on its terms for what it was. It's really nice, and it's a shame that it couldn't have happened sooner in its life cycle as a game. But it gives us something to work on, and we always want to do better with the next game. The next game, we say, is always going to be better than the current one, and so on and so on and so on. Even if we go between genres, which isn't an easy thing for a dev to do. When you think of all the fantastic games out there, how many of them are actually the sequel or the nth in the series, where someone's actually mastering their trade? And here we are trying to, we're going to do that again in that genre, but in between we're going to try something in this genre as well, and then something in this genre. So, but yeah, looking back at Yooka-Laylee, very fond memories of that time. Proud of what it did. Thank goodness we'd never have to make a game and build a team at the same time, or run a company for the first time, or go on a hiring and grow from 6 to 20 people, and learn how to use a middleware engine for the first time, and do multi-platform releases for the first time, and work with a publisher for the first time. There's so many things on the side of actually just making that game, which got in the way of making that game. And it's great, we've done that. We never have, those hurdles are gone now. They're not recurring hurdles. So now I'm very, very positive and very, happy with how it turned out. And regardless of how it turned out, even if it came out and everybody loved it, I'd still be thinking, well, we've got to beat it next time around. We've got to do something even better. And that wouldn't change no matter what the score.
Yeah, honestly, I think the release on the Switch was when I saw a lot of the reception to the game kind of warm a little bit more, because I really feel like that's when it found its audience.
It's it's home, I'd say.
Yeah. So, but then, and then obviously, like in the last year or so since Daly joined the staff, I've just noticed that the general reception and reaction towards Yooka-Laylee has definitely veered towards the positive, and it's just warmly regarded now. And then the ones who are just have a problem with it have just gone off, and they're not talking about it anymore. So it's kind of nice. But now you still have some unfinished business, and I think you alluded to this earlier with the first Yooka-Laylee. So it's fine if you can't talk about any of this. That I completely understand, but I feel like I need to bring it up, or else our audience will have our head. So Inept from the Toy Box is in Galleon Galaxy right now, and he's counting up to something. I think there's only like 0.1% left in the countdown, or count up, whatever it is. And of course, there's the infamous pirate treasure collectibles that don't show up on the UI. They just collect them as spooky little jingle plays, and there's nothing to it. And come on, like, give us a little something. What do you have planned? What's going on with the unfinished threads in the original Yooka-Laylee?
So we want to use them in a nice this ties up things kind of way, but not completely ties them up. Maybe it kind of just keeps a long running thread cropping up within certain titles. So they're not done with, they're not off our minds. Something I can say is there is actually a 2-box in existence that the devs at the end of the first Yooka-Laylee designers thought, what could we, if we had to do some thoughts on things we could have done differently in Yooka based on some of the feedback that came out during the review period, what would we do? And we said, let's just create a 2-box experience, which is like a second toy box that Inept's built. And I'm semi-tempted to just want to get that out in the wild, actually, and show it to people. But then people might perceive it to mean something else or not be what they want it to be. So it's kind of difficult. I know you could say to certain people, hey, look, here's this thing. It's just this thing by itself. Hey, look at it. This is kind of an insight into what our heads were doing at the time and thinking, and they'd accept that. But other people would be going, no, but look at it. It's this, or not this, and not this, and I want it to be this. So yeah, there's lots of things still on our mind, and it makes sense to tie them in with something further down the line and make the best use of what we've been setting up with them. See what I mean? Rather than try and do it badly, if that makes sense. But I can't go any more specific than that, can I? Without just saying, they're the key collectibles in the forthcoming battle royale, first person battle. Yooka-Laylee.
Oh. I was trying to think of a pun, and you beat me to it. Okay.
Hyle kind of mentioned Galleon Galaxy there, and I just wanted to point out that's one of my favorite worlds in the original Yooka-Laylee. And the Yooka-Laylee universe between the first game and also Impossible Lair, it has a lot of really awesome locations and environments and places that you just want to explore and you want to spend time in those worlds and those locations. Do you think it's possible? Do you have any plans to revisit some of the same locations from past grand tomes and maybe go to new places in those tomes, or kind of revisit those existing locales?
I'd like to do that, and not only because it's a cheaper way to develop video games, but because genuinely I'd love to creatively explore more around those areas. I would like to go back and show a lot more stuff and have stuff recurring. There's this natural instinct, like with being a dev, to go, we've got to do new stuff. And it's kind of a shame that actually you don't go back and go and see old stuff. I'd love to go and set some sort of genuine, bona fide isometric experience in the isometric palace. I would like to have locations crop up in different genres and go, oh wow, look at this side of this world that we've never seen before, or extra insight into these areas. So I'd love to do that. I think it helps as part of the whole universe building side of things as well. Let's do it.
I'm glad you brought up universe building, because in addition to Impossible Lair, we also have the upcoming graphic novel Yooka-Laylee and the Cracklestone, which is coming soon from Dream Prism Press. Now, I listened to all of those developer commentaries you did earlier this year for the original game, and you're clearly a person who cares about like the integrity and internal consistency of your universe. So when you signed off on that, was it hard, like letting go and letting someone else play in that world?
In a way, yeah, it is. But he was really easy to work with. David was, and he was always, coming in, checking in, discussing things with us. So he very quickly earned our trust, and and he was. He always just said, look, as soon as you guys say I'm crossing a barrier to, stop me, I don't mind. So it worked really well, and it was nice to do that. And it is nice to see the IP, the characters, the worlds, locations appear in other mediums as well. We'd love to do more of that stuff in future, I think.
Yeah, and we're holding your feet to the fire, making sure it all remains consistent and there's no continuity errors. So don't worry, if there is, we'll come up with an explanation for it, and you don't have to pay us anything for it. This is what we do. It's just sickness, really, but it is who we are.
But if you want to pay us, we wouldn't say no to that.
I was honestly, this is no word of a lie. When we redesigned Shipwreck Creek and Ivory Towers for Impossible Lair, because this is you see that early on in the game, and you get to go off and explore the island from those points, and they're the only common reference points back to the first game. I genuinely went, what will DK Fine think of this? And that was before Daly joined, honestly. But we've there's an exclamation in there why it's not all the same.
Okay, good. I know.
I hope if you're very, 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 very amazing at the game, maybe people will find out that answer. But I don't anticipate anytime soon.
That's a problem for us.
Yeah. We're actually terrible at video games.
I want it to be this year's Cuphead moment when someone just can't get past the first thing. The entire game.
You have a bit of a sadism streak in you, don't you?
I do, yeah. 2D platforming is the perfect genre for the sadist designer.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I'm not done nerding out about lore here, so indulge me. So, okay, between the batship crazy, all the pirate treasure we already mentioned, things like the one book and the pages and all of that, and then you've got references to organizations like Vile at the end of the original game. Spoilers, everybody, spoilers. And we got smaller character-based stuff too, like the Knights of Hamelot and their whole deal. You've thrown a lot into this universe, or this very young, shared universe already. In the developer commentaries, you made, at first they seem like joking allusions to having massive documents that outline all of this. So I have to ask, are they real, or how much of this do you just make up along the way?
Right. How much do I make up along the way, Daly? All of it, or just some of it? No. Well, seriously, there are a ton of let's just say broad brushstrokes which have always existed, and when we have characters to put in a game, we don't go in light-hearted. We think, no, what do we have a really strong pre-existing desire of a game to make, and who are the heroes or villains of that game? Like, where do they fit in within our first game? And there's tons of great characters. There's a lot of thought gone into already, like experiences for these characters in their own experiences, and how we weave them together and kind of figure out some of the finer brushstrokes. I think it's important that even if I do have some preconceived ideas and thoughts of what those are, I embrace the fact that there's a ton of creative people just sat everywhere within the studio who may be able to come up with better stuff, and most of the time do, and help flesh out and have some creative ownership over that process of, right, let's discuss this person or that game in more detail and what it means and what will happen in future with them. So there's always plans, and plans could deviate slightly because it just improves and makes for a better end experience. But honestly, I wouldn't like to think I'm just making stuff up as I go along on a needs must basis. There is kind of a more longer term plan for most of the key elements of everything going on in this universe.
Okay, I'll snuggle myself up in that like a warm blanket, and just that soothes me to hear. So another thing that really came across though in these developer commentaries was that you do have this passion for your fictional babies, these characters that you've helped shepherd into existence. So I have to ask, and this isn't like me saying like what character will get their own game. That isn't what I'm saying. I'm saying like you're totally free here to just imagine along with us. Which Playtonic character do you most want to give their own game, even if it's not feasible in the slightest? And I will cancel my pre-order for Impossible Lair if the answer isn't Bendy, but no pressure there. If you could give any Playtonic character their own game, who would you want it to be?
You know, I'm happy to not restrict this to just one. Okay. The Space Witch Shell.
Yes.
And people know what kind of like the high level design for that kind of game would be, and I'm really excited. I'm thinking, wow, why aren't we sat with £1 billion worth of cash reserves right now? We'd be making that game, as we would the Knights of Camelot and Dr. Quack and Capital B, the Googly Eyes, just the Googly Eyes. There's a bunch of characters. What's that? Skeleton. What's her name?
Clara.
Who? Yeah,
Clara.
No.
Yeah.
Clara. You know, there's plenty of pre-existing ideas, and like, you know, I'd love to be making all of these things right now. I'm not saying whether I am or am not actually involved in doing any of that, but I can't pick a single one. That's the problem. I'm a buffet kind of guy. You know, I want to be doing a bit of everything. Yeah, does that? I'm Vendy. Sorry, I'm Vendy. Obviously.
Oh yeah, no, no, thank you.
You saved yourself there.
My finger was hovering over the cancel button just now, and I pulled back. It's fine. I'll play your damn game, but.
Yeah, I was just thinking, you know, somebody really needs to make a game about the Yooka-Laylee character, Shovel Knight. I think there could be a good game there.
We thought about it, but no, he's a bit generic, isn't he? He's a bit, yeah. No, honestly, no, he's fantastic. But yeah, no, there would be loads. Kartos as well. How can we forget good old Kartos? And the trolleys. Kartos and the trolleys. In some kind of 4-on-1 asymmetrical multiplayer racing game where one player plays as Kartos and the other people play as the 4 trolleys, and they're just trying to stop Kartos completing a race.
Okay, somebody write it down, quick.
Someone fund it quick, please.
So we're getting kind of close to the end here, and I had one question I really wanted to get in here. I really like getting really cryptic clues that don't actually tell us anything at all. So if you could give us like a one word or a couple words that are a hint at what future games we have to look forward to. Something that won't even make any sense to us now, but like 3 years down the line, we're going to say, okay, that's what that meant. What would your clue be? Just like a one or two words clue for us.
Oh, let me think. A little bit of a hint. I don't know. I'm a bit lost. I mean, that's a really good question. I wish you'd have said, all right, we'll prep you this question, Gav. Think about it, and you can make yourself sound really intelligent come the end of the.
Well, we don't want to have that happen.
No. Oh, blimey. That's really good. I'll have to come back and obviously just do a second podcast and answer that one.
All right, that'll work.
I've not overly disgraced myself this time around.
And for the more conspiracy-minded of our audience, they're going to take everything you just said there and think that was actually a clue. So,
it was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let me think. What could that mean?
Well, are you picking the right word? That's the thing.
Oh,
Oh,
we're gonna have to go back and listen to this, Jeff. We're gonna have to play it in reverse and see what.
but
out.
the 6 hour commentary on our own episode.
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah.
I have 20 more questions to ask you, but honestly, they're all Vendy based, so I think that about does it. Gavin, thank you so much for joining us. Yooka-Laylee and the Impossible Lair, which features 3 brilliant B characters, comes out on October 8th. We might talk about it on a future episode. I don't know. Might give it like 15 minutes or so. We'll see.
We'd really appreciate it. Thank you. And next time, Connect Sports. I can't believe we got to this point again. We still haven't done a deep dive.
We'll bring you on for the 20th anniversary episode for Connect Sports. Don't worry. Thank you, Gavin Price.
I'll be the only developer who's still alive back then. All the others were well old.
This has been a File 2 production.
Que rico.